Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a Saturday afternoon edition of No Limits. Yes, there are no limits, and my pipes are pretty good as it stands right now. Then I haven't had to use them for a couple of days, but nevertheless, I am proud to be joined by aspiring sportscaster Spencer Tomsett. Spencer, to me, I had an opportunity to meet at the December 2021 National Sports Media Association convention, and we had an awful lot of fun, didn't we, Spence?
Oh yeah, a whole bunch of fun there in 21 and 2022.
You bet, man. So, all right. Well, let me give everybody an overview. Limits is our show that we do one-on-one, in-depth interviews with everybody. And I think one of the things that was pretty cool when I first met you over in the lobby in the hallway was, you were very kind enough to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then I ended up getting quite a few more during that thing. But you set the tone because I saw when we got to know each other that there was an incredible bond there. And with that said, okay, I want you to go ahead and I want people to realize that you were my in-house photographer, and that led to some pretty good stuff, didn't it, Spence?
Funny enough, this past Thursday, I had the opportunity to meet Mike Keith, the voice of the Tennessee Titans, and he invited me to come about an hour earlier. The Titans were doing an event for potential season ticket buyers and new ticket buyers to, celebrate that and get more ticket sales in that regard. And he invited me an hour ahead of time. Him and I had a really good conversation and such. And from there, but in between conversations he and I were having, there was a line of people, as in some cases, for some of us broadcasters, we have people who admire our work to the point of wanting to get photos with us or autographs and what have you. And there was a line of people for Mike Keith, because he's so beloved by Music City, that there were people wanting to take photos with him, and I took up that photographer role. I didn't have to. There was no obligation to, or it wasn't an expectation in that regard, but I just kept asking people, hey, do you want your photo taken with Mike? I'll make sure it's taken care of. And I just took the photo, and I did the same Scott Morganroth method: portrait, several photos, and landscape, several photos. But the only thing I didn't do was the backup full distance and then close up zoom in, because that's a patented Scott Morganroth method that I only use for his photos in that regard. But no, yeah, it's when we first met at the National Sports Media Association banquet, it was I didn't know what to expect coming to that thing. So December 2021, my best friend Jack graduated from Middle Tennessee State University with his bachelor's degree. And I knew a few months ahead of time, I knew I wanted to go to Winston-Salem because Jimnantz was going to be there. This was my first time to experience Winston-Salem and the incredible networking opportunity it provides. And he was graduating. His graduation ceremony was that evening, like at about 6 o'clock or 7 in the evening in Murfreesboro. So I went from his graduation, waited about 20 minutes in the parking lot for all the cars to finally shuttle out, and then drove all the way to Winston-Salem, got there at about 2 or 3 in the morning to the Embassy Suites that's right across the street from the Marriott where all the events are hosted. And I drove through the night, and thankfully registration wasn't until noon or past noon in Winston-Salem, so I had a chance to catch up on sleep for interacting with people. But yeah, I went over to the lobby. I registered. I realized, there's a whole gap of hours before we get into the networking side of stuff. So I went back to my hotel room, just waited a few hours. I was also fighting off a sickness at that point. So I decided, okay, let me get some extra rest here, get some like cold cough medicine to try and, push through in that regard. And so I did. So I did that. And then I came back about, I want to say, an hour before the festivities started with the first welcome networking event, maybe an hour or hour and a half beforehand. And I go up there, and you, Scott, sitting on one of the benches over there, just sitting over. And you just looked at me and said hello, and I agreed to introduce myself and everything. And you did your normal spiel about the South Florida Tribune and subscribing to the YouTube channel, which anybody who has at Winston-Salem knows that by heart now, who's been there in this last several years that Scott has been there, and subscribed. We exchanged contact information, everything. Started talking about our started talking about our exchanges and all of that. And, I tell people all the time, and I tell people, from that experience, that first point of contact, that first relationship was everything for me. Because now I don't have any nervousness in my body really to go and introduce myself to notable people, at least in the sports media realm. Maybe if it gets into like the actor side or singer-songwriters or any of those other celebrities, maybe I'll still have a little bit of nerves because of meeting, idols in that regard. But 2021, I saw it modeled right in front of me with Scott Morganroth, because Scott, for those of you who don't know, if you don't watch the South Florida Tribune, make sure you subscribe, follow him on all their social media, and make sure you get this wherever you get your podcast. There's my free plug for you. But with Scott, he's not afraid to approach anybody, and it also helps that he's been around the business a while, and with Scott, he's already has rapport with several of these guys. He's reconnecting with them, or those he hasn't met before. He's like, hey, can we get photos together? Can we talk about this? And then starts a conversation with them. And I think the important thing that Scott does that I realized, and sometimes it's different where you have to kind of have this feel for it. But what Scott does, he gets the photo up front. He has the photo up front and then starts the conversation afterwards. So that way, photo's done, because there's always a chance where at the end they're like, hey, I gotta go, I gotta do stuff or something else. You up front, you introduce yourself and say, hey, can I get a photo with you? And then go from there, and then build that rapport and conversation and show, hey, I'm not just here for the photos, I'm here for this. And that benefits more in the long run. But it also taught me very much, I like to consider myself a good listener and somebody who knows when to contribute to the conversation and knows when to hold back. Scott very much taught me that even more with the conversations he had with a lot of these great guys who are great men and women and broadcasters and sports media colleagues. I just listen. I just listen, soaked in the information. And fortunately, there's several cases of other people at those banquets who have actually wanted a conversation with me and to learn more about what I want to do and what it is I want to accomplish. And from there, it was very much a benefit for me to meet Scott first, because from there, I don't really, even in 2022, like when Ernie Johnson first walked into the first night of the awards, where the award ceremony, banquet activities and everything, I saw him and I didn't really have any nerves. Now, when Scott and I went over to get photos with Jim Nantz and shake his hand and meet him for the first time, my heart was pounding. It was pounding. Like I had never really experienced that high of anxiety or issues in the past. And it was just pounding, thumping, anxious and everything. And now I don't really have that much fear anymore. With Ernie Johnson, even meeting charlesbarkley and scottvanpelt, jeffpassen, any of those type of broadcasters, I don't have any fears in that regard. And that's why I now email notable broadcasters that I'm very much interested in. I email them introducing myself because I just don't have a fear of rejection in terms of making those connections. With people who are in the notable eye in the broadcasting realm, the worst they can say is no. And there are times where they will say no, or they'll say, well, not necessarily no, but maybe this, or we can do this or something else like that. But all in all, with meeting Scott at first, I now am ready to pass on those skills. Scott, him and I talked about for this Winston-Salem, there for the NSMA banquet, there will be some events he attends, some of them he doesn't, which we all kind of get to that point anyways, where when you're in college, the NSMA awards convention is great for meeting colleagues and such, but once you get to a certain point, it sometimes is only really advantageous for you at times to go for when you win a Sportscaster award or sports writer award. It certainly always has its benefits. It never hurts for you to go, but there's sometimes where your schedule just pulls you aside to where you have to weigh out the differences in that regard. But Scott and I have talked about it, and I'm ready to pass on those skills because I'm I'm the founding president for the NSMA chapter at the University of Alabama, and I've already got a list of maybe between 5 to 10 students who are wanting to go. I already have one member who said, "Hey, I've already paid for the convention. I'm going." And I've got a colleague of mine who graduates from MTSU in this semester, and him and I are splitting a hotel room. And at first, I told him before Scott had mentioned he wouldn't be in Winston-Salem this year. I told him, "Hey, just follow me and Scott will introduce you to everybody." And now that I have those kind of skill sets, I am ready to introduce my colleague and any of the other colleagues from the University of Alabama, these students who are sophomores, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors. I'm ready to introduce them to all these people because I know what to do. It's just don't fear rejection. They know why they're there. You know why you're here. And so far, nobody in the sports media realm has been standoffish to me in that regard. But all in all, yeah, when Scott and I met, it was just we clicked like that. We realized the drive we have. Some people may perceive it as smothering. I say it's just being a leader. I say it's just being forward, and you know exactly what you want and exactly what you want to achieve and get. So you just do it. You just absolutely do it. So from Scott and I meeting, it was absolutely a great pleasure. And now I have a very rich toolkit, a tool belt in that regard for NSMA and networking with colleagues and introducing myself to even some of the most iconic names in the industry.
Well, I will tell you this right now, and davegoren prepped me a little bit for it before I went up there because we exchanged text messages and all. Just said bring a phone with a camera, and these people will treat you great, and you're a colleague. And that one thing I tried to convey to you was, listen, Spence, you're here now, okay? My first time there was a little, wow, they're pretty interesting people, but I got rid of that in 15 minutes as I belong here is what I figured, okay? And I knew at that point, hey, I'm a sportscaster, sports media guy, just like any of these people. And that was the one message I tried to convey to you really quickly, and you gravitated. I should point out here, by the way, folks, and once again, happy Saturday afternoon, that No Limits can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. So please hit the red subscribe button, okay? And that's what you'll see on your screen on YouTube, South Florida Tribune. And we're striving for 1,000 subscribers. We've come a long way, but we're certainly looking to go a little bit further, or a lot more further. Want to be a guest? No problem. Send your topic ideas to southfloridatribune@gmail.com. And if you want to advertise, call me at 954-304-4941. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and the YouTube channel. That's it. So, Spence, I think the thing that's important too, and you were able to pick up on it right away, and I knew you had a lot of potential after our formal introduction, is you didn't mind hanging around me, and I wanted to find somebody that I can take under my wing and try to show, hey, you belong here. That's what my attitude was to you. So don't feel for a minute that you should ever be overwhelmed. And as I continue to implement those things to you, you are a first-class sponge. And folks, I'll be honest with you, okay, I don't wear ties, but when it came down to crunch time, okay, Spencer did a good job there taking care of my tie. But another thing that's also important too, though, that I tell a lot of people, especially those that are willing to listen, is just be yourself, okay? Nobody's any bigger than the other. When you're around your colleagues, we're all here to be a lot more cordial. And one of my favorite people I introduced you to is Bobryan, who I've known for a while. And Bob, I met him over at the NBA draft many years ago at the Palace of Auburn Hills. We remember each other, even though time had elapsed. And that's the whole thing, when you're there, the photo, yeah, I mean, I'll never explain my networking method any better than you, so I only dare to try to do it. But the reality is be yourself, be relaxed, don't be intimidated. As long as you can do that, you'll be fine. Because let me tell you, I've learned, I've interviewed Muhammadali, Tom Lasorda, and some of the greatest people in the sports world. But the key to getting through any interview is just be yourself and be prepared. That's the thing people have to do. Be prepared, be yourself. Everything takes care of itself. I mean, I got one of the guys I knew many years ago. I don't know if you ever heard the name. His name was Phil Pepe. Okay, he used to be of New York Daily News many years ago. I went to the 1981 baseball winter meetings, and my first big interview was Tom Lasorda. So Phil Pepe says to me, you know what? I'll give you a few ideas and questions, but Tommy will talk. And believe me, that's where the follow-up questions come in. And even on the last NSMA thing that I had done, obviously it was great to get contacts, but then I thought the book event over in Winston-Salem was great and snapped up a bunch of good interviews on the last one. I think one of my favorite ones was Bobryan and Bob Glauber. And Bob Glauber, for a lot of people that know him, this guy's a first-class individual in every sense of the word. But, I just think it's just one of those things, and I hope everybody that's watching this show today can realize that, hey, you know what? What am I going to get out of watching you and Spencer today? You're going to watch a guy that's been in the business for a while, that wants to take somebody under his wing, that really wants to go out there and hopefully sponge and ask questions. And anybody that ever wants to contact me, I don't turn them down as long as they're decent, quality human beings. And that's really what it's all about, and you, to me, were just the beginning of what would turn out to be an incredible 2021 opportunity. And the only reason I can't make it this year is because of medical issues. I've got a lot of medical issues, and in the future, I'll probably be going over there to maybe not go to the awards banquet at night, but the other things. So, but I think the one thing you better tell Dave Goren, if you're taking 5 to 10 people from Alabama, I want to know where my kickback and my check is for all those people going there. You better let Goren say, hey, you know what? He may not be there. You'll miss his one-liners, but my lasting effect as an entrepreneur working for the Tribune. And you can even mention to Goren that he ought to go out there and have another category for entrepreneurs in the business, because nowadays this industry is not only focused on the big guy, but nowadays, the decline of newspapers and stations, downsizing from not even having a sports department, because some of them around the country aren't doing it. People are still in this business, but in different ways, independent ways, and they're every bit as credible, especially as the podcasting world has begun to emerge. So, all right, so let's go on to another good experience that we had there, Spence. Okay, John Walton, Washington Capitals play-by-play announcer, said you had some great pipes, and I knew you did, but so let's talk about that situation, okay, Spence?
I will say about Bobryan, one of the so that first day at the NSMA banquet, when you're there for the first time, you're kind of feeling out that's the situation, at least from my experience. The first time I was there, you're kind of feeling it out and thinking again. I was kind of waffling that mind of like, is this right? Am I supposed to be here rubbing elbows with these kind of guys and everything? And fortunately, you killed my nerves and really quickly. But I remember that evening we were at the we were at the table for the was it the Rune Aldridge Award? I think yeah, it was the Rune Aldridge Award for innovation, and it was Neil Leifer was getting his award for the amazing photos that he had taken. But it was you and me at a table with Robert Eggleston, board member of the NSMA, Wake Forest member, Bobryan, and I'm trying to remember the names, but several other, I think 1 or 2 other board members for the NSMA. They were all gathered at the table and such. And there was just the conversations were going back and forth about, basketball history and these things. And I remember at one point, Bobryan, I can't remember which college basketball coach he had frustrations with, but but he was like, this coach is ruining the game of basketball, and just went into one of his signature monologues. And then the conversation came up. It was right after, because this was in December 21. It was right after Wake Forest was in the ACC football championship, and it was the play that the quarterback did the fake slide and then continue to run, and there wasn't an NCAA rule for it, so technically you could do that. And then the NCAA immediately said, okay, we got to change this because this is risking player safety in this regard. And the majority of the table, when they discussed it, they were like, yeah, was it a good move? Yes. Probably should have removed it and everything was a problem. And then Bobryan chirps, I didn't see anything wrong with that. I thought it was a good move. And Robert Eggleston leaned into me. He goes, not a bad table to be at in Winston-Salem, eh, son? So just hearing that and being able to be a part of that conversation. And again, it goes back to, I consider myself a good listener. Of course, the people at the table asked me what I wanted to do, and they asked about my aspirations and that kind of stuff. And I appropriately answered when the time came for that. But I still sat back, soaked in. I listened to that conversation because I had that same thing happen on the meeting with Mikekeith. It was we had just seen. We were looking out at the field. Nissan Stadium now has AstroTurf, or they have turf, which is the first time in their 25-year history about it. It was me, Mikekeith, the new general manager, Rand Carthen, and Keith Bullock was there. And Keith didn't know this at the time. He just got inducted into the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame, and they were surprising him at that event. But they had him come speak about the Titans and the experience he had with the fans and everything to try and get people to, buy tickets. So it was just those three. I was able to be a part of it and sit there. 30-minute conversation between the three of just chirping about football and sports experiences, the Titans and everything, just chirping back and forth. And again, if I had not gone to Winston-Salem twice, now planning 3 times with the summer, if I hadn't been there, I wouldn't have known necessarily to just sit back, listen, only speak up when you really have something that's important to say. But yeah, it was you mentioned Bobryan, so I had to bring up that's how incredible it was in that regard. So, but John Walton. So, as I mentioned earlier, I was fighting a sickness.
Let's go back to
sure.
Bobryan. When I was sitting there, you were sponging, and you saw him and I going back and forth, and I said, "Hey, this is my, my buddy here, Spence." And then and once I introduced you to him, and you got into the picture routine as you always do, it was just a heck of a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, no, Bobryan's great, and especially with him being I think he's also a board member for the NSMA. And
that's why he goes there a lot, because obviously Dave and him are close, and Bob will go there to support him. But all right, I want to hear the John Walton story again.
Yeah, no, Bob's great. Bob's great. I look forward to seeing him again in the summers. You always do, and I love the book talk interview you did with him as well, and seeing that in the chirping because you guys had like a 30-minute interview. Like 30-minute conversation, just because of that relationship you built. I love seeing that kind of stuff. So John Walton, as you can tell, we broadcasters love to tell stories. We'd love to talk once we start chirping. So like I mentioned, I had started, I was fighting a sickness that weekend. And I had told myself, like, I got to my throat was starting to feel scratchy the night that I was driving over to Winston-Salem. And I woke up feeling like it was cold. It may have been I never ended up testing myself, but it could have been it could have been COVID at that point. And I told myself I paid enough money. I paid the money to be here. If I don't feel deathly ill, and I paid the money to be here. I've driven out all this way and everything. Cold medicine, keep my coughs down, keep using hand sanitizer to keep people safe and everything, and just be good in that regard. So John Walton was there. It was when part of that first it was that part of that first mix and mingler, and you and I walked up to John Walton, and I shook his hand, briefly introduced myself, and you and John started chirping, as you always do with pretty much anybody at these events. You started talking and such, and my sickness was getting to the point of I need to step outside and get in the cold weather, because I'm overheating right now, and if I do something, I'm going to pass out. So I probably should have said something like "I'll be right back" or whatever it was, but I just walked off because I knew if I had interrupted I didn't want to interrupt the conversation. Right. So I walked out of the hotel. And I sat on one of their benches or tables or whatever for I think 30 minutes to finally cool down and just detox, relax. And right. At that point, I was like, oh God, I just walked away from somebody, and this is a bad perception and everything. What have I done? But I walked back in. You were separated and such, and I told you I was like, yeah, it's sick or whatever. John Walton looked across the way over there. He made his way to walk towards me.
Right.
He walked over and said, "Hey, I didn't get a chance to hear about your career, the stuff you wanted to do, or anything." Which that meant the world to me, of somebody as a broadcaster or anything noticing that, hey, I didn't get a chance to talk about. Let me go out of my way and make sure I actually hear this kid out. Which that was really meaningful. And so, I told him, at the time I was at Middle Tennessee State University finishing my master's. What I want to do, he said, what do you want to do? I told him I want to be the play-by-play commentator for the Super Bowl on CBS, NBC, Fox, or ESPN. And he looked at me and goes, well, you got the pipes for it. And so that's where the nickname has started with Scott, where the entire weekend and 2022 and any conversation we have forward, he looks at me and goes, Mr. Pipes. Like, hey, he always calls me that because John Walton said, you have the pipes to be able to call the Super Bowl. Right. And him and I had a good conversation from there of the stuff I was doing with the NSMA chapter and built a good rapport in the things we were doing there. So that experience with John Walton was not just as the compliment of my pipes, but going out of his way. And that's what I hope that I can do at some point. If I ever get to that point of being, I guess, notable, lack of a better term, or being known in the sports media world as somebody who's a voice of a team or on the NFL on CBS, what have you. If I ever get to that point, I want to do that for some college kid. I want to be able to, see them across the way and, ask them, just have a conversation and try to build, just try and build up their confidence in that regard. Because, John Walton did that for me. Several other broadcasters have done that. I mean, even recently, so the 2023 Sportscaster of the Year, ianeagle, I saw him win his award. Got his email from the NSMA membership directory, sent him an email, introduced myself, asked for a booth visit, and he responded about 3 weeks later saying, hey, apologies for not getting back to you sooner. The broadcast travel schedule has been hectic. Let's carve out some time to talk on the phone this week. And he straight up gave me his cell number. And we had a 90-minute phone conversation. And it's one of many amazing conversations I've had with colleagues. ianeagle is very much, and I told him the same thing at the end of our phone call and everything. I look forward to shaking his hand in Winston-Salem, because he provided a lot of wisdom to me, not just about the sports broadcasting realm, but talking about other aspects of life. And what do you do when this happens or this happens, and being able to, have those conversations. But, I look forward to shaking his hand and, getting to interact with him in person, but I more so look forward to introducing him to any colleagues that I bring with me to Winston-Salem and getting them to shake his hand and be able to not just say they met ianeagle, but they've been able to interact with somebody who is one of the best to do it in all aspects of sport. So it doesn't matter who it is to me. I'm ready to meet anybody and everybody in the sports media realm. The ones that stand out are the ones who make me feel heard, listened, and acknowledged to, which includes guys like Jimnantz, ianeagle, John Walton, bobsocci, the voice of the Patriots. When we met him this past summer, he was incredible too. I also bonded with him because my best friend from Melbourne, Australia, he's a huge Patriots fan, and we did a full video thing. He asked several questions to Bob, and I got to film myself asking him that and him answering those questions. My buddy Jordan absolutely loved it. So just moments like that are what stand out the most to me of, not of people in the sports media realm, just making me feel heard, listened, and acknowledged to. And I want to pay that forward to, my colleagues and to future students who are wanting to get into the sports media realm.
Yeah, I should talk about ianeagle for just a moment. I met him over at when the Jacksonville Jaguars hosted the Buffalo Bills, and they won 10-3. And I got to know Ian, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Yeah. And we talked during halftime for 15, 20 minutes before they went back. And it was unbelievable. And again, I'm sure our paths will cross at some point. I still am active in the NFL. Right now, I have so many things I'm trying to do with the business side of this thing, as well as continue to work on growing the thing. But no doubt, but I met ianeagle. You talk about a classy guy. He works for Westwood One, doing some of the radio. So, all right, 3 more questions I want to get to. First of all, you paid your lifetime membership up front. So what's your plan going forward with your career, Spence?
I have a vision for what I want to do, but I don't know. I don't have necessarily a clear pathway of how I will get there. Because I think ianeagle said it to me best. You ask anybody in the sports media realm what their story is, you're going to get 1,000 different answers. You're going to get so many different perspectives and answers on how did you get to your career, what was your start, what did you have to do, and everything. So for me right now I'm in PhD school at the University of Alabama. It's specifically, the title of it is a PhD in Communication and Information Sciences. And basically what that means is it is a research heavy degree. So I'm learning time management and how to process a huge amount of information in a short amount of time as possible, which is fantastic for us in broadcast, for studying stories and teams and what have you. In my case, I'm calling games for the SEC Network Plus, ESPN Plus broadcast through Crimson Tide Productions. They got me. I was fortunate enough to do women's soccer as my SEC debut last semester, as well as do 2 volleyball games, and they have me in the wings for their other broadcasts. So hopefully, I'll be given that incredible opportunity to do those games going forward. And right now my big project this semester has been the NSMA chapter at Bama. Now, Dave has said he won't fight me on this because they don't know the exact number, but we're marketing ourselves as the 8th student chapter in the nation for the NSMA and the 1st in the state of Alabama. So my big project right now is making it so that 10 years down the line, myself or any of our current executive board members can go back to Bama, see the chapter thriving, be able to speak at a meeting and give them the same inspiration that we had or we were given by other broadcasters when we started. So that's my big project right now.
So then let me ask you this, okay? And I'm glad that you are trying to build the NSMA in Alabama. But when you talk about a lifetime membership to NSMA, okay, I guess the biggest question I'm wondering is, what's your plan moving forward in your career in terms of where that's going to lead you?
So with the NSMA, it never hurt. It never hurts to widen your network and widen your horizons. Davegoren told me, told myself, we were fortunate enough to be joined by him on Zoom last month for our NSMA chapter meeting for February. And he mentioned, the saying goes from parents, it's not what you know, it's who you know. He took it a step further and said, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. Who knows of your quality of work, who knows of the skills you have and has a positive perception of you, who knows you.
Right.
And that's really, you mentioned the lifetime membership fee. In 2020, that was when we were required, as I was the founding secretary and current vice president for the NSMA chapter. And it was either in 2019 or 2020, executives are required to pay their membership fees. And I looked at it and I said to myself, well, I'm going into sports media my entire career. There's no point in me spending more money than I have to or having a continual cost. So let me just dump. At the time it was $750. I think they raised it now. It's $1,000. So I said to myself, let me just spend the $750 now, one-time fee, get it over with, especially because I'm going to be in the industry. I see it the rest of my life, then buy it. So that way I can, use the membership benefits to my advantage, which includes the membership directory of emailing pretty much anybody who's on there, which a lot of notable people in the business are on that membership directory. Getting a discount on at the awards weekend every year, and getting those kickbacks that eventually will add up to my membership fees and or other costs. The NSMA also has other like membership discounts and what have you. But for me, I'm utilizing the NSMA for the networking aspect and to certainly continue to build off of these relationships. I know we also a self plug here. Myself and Joe Chambers, we met. I met Joe Chambers shortly after you and I had met at that Intro Mixer Mingler networking event. And Joe Chambers and I now have a podcast, which we're talking about stories from the broadcast booth.
Right.
So, with that, it's continuing to foster those relationships and help other people out. Because, for me, I've always told myself that you have to put in the hard work. You have to earn your stripes in this industry to be able to make it to where you want to go. But I feel that the skill set works itself out. And the relationship stuff is really what is most valuable to work on. And that's the kind of stance I'm taking. I'm working on building relationships, trying to reinvest more into those that have invested in me. And, just it's my continual goal in life is to always be kind in everything I do. And that just plays into it with being a part of the NSMA is, it's an incredible opportunity for me to do that. And in some cases, receive that when I don't feel I'm deserving. But I just, at this point, my goal with that is to continue to move up in the game and the networking aspect and move up in the broadcasting realm to hopefully eventually call the Super Bowl on television when I get the honor.
Well, here's the thing with me. Had I met Dave Goren through LinkedIn and we stayed in touch and I was ready to go forward, and I knew the organization was great. There was never a doubt. The only reason, had I been in my 40s, 45, I probably would have done exactly the same thing with you, pay it up front, not worry about the monthly deduction. But when you're in your late 50s, okay, and 60s, I just turned 60 in December. It just paid for me to just take it out every month and be done with it. But no, I'm with you. I mean, I would have paid the whole thing up front, not worry about a monthly deduction. If I were in my early 40s, late 40s, 30s, I wasn't worried about then because I've been moving around a little bit. In my 40s, it would have been worthwhile to pay the whole thing like you did. But nevertheless, I've recouped a lot of great benefits from it. And I still plan to go out there and return to events when I'm medically able to get up there and I feel up to the drive and so forth. And I'll probably go ahead, future conventions, I'll probably pair them up with a side trip. So that'll be one stop in a bigger picture trip. But you did was right. I mean, you're in your mid-20s, you know what you're going to do. So that was a no-brainer. But me, at this stage of the game of my life, it made no sense. But a few years back, that's another story. All right, so let's go back to another question. You probably answered it already because like you and I were both broadcasters, we can probably talk one question that leads to another. But for all intents purposes, for clarity purposes, okay, what sports are you broadcasting now?
Right now, so this semester, I don't have any on the docket.
Okay.
I've been told by my supervisor, Crimson Tide Productions, I'm more so in the wings for baseball and softball on the SEC
Okay.
Network Plus. If any other opportunities arise, I'm happy to take them. But in terms of if a specific sports that I call, pretty much name it, I've called it. Like I called a cross country championship in high school. The majority of my experience has been in high school 8-man football, but I've called e-sporting events. I've called volleyball, baseball, basketball, softball, men's and women's tennis. Also called those events. So it's very I try to keep myself diverse in the portfolio of sports I broadcast, just because it makes you way more marketable. And it's also, the same amount of intensity and awesome action you see in tennis or cross country, that also, translates over to football. I mean, certainly you have to call it a different way and prepare in a different way for the sports you do, but each of them are still fun. And I tell people all the time, they ask me what's your favorite sport to call. I tell them, the Super Bowl is the goal, and I enjoy football. It's what I follow more, but anytime I'm in the booth, it's a blessing. It's always a blessing to be able to say that somebody put their trust in me to lead their broadcast, present their product in the best of light, and do justice to the moments in sport that deserve them.
Yeah, I should point out in recent years, I've had an opportunity to work in the booth a little bit, just very minimal. I enjoy it. It's always been a dream of mine ever since I was a kid. When I first grew up in Metro Detroit, I'll never forget the one guy I used to emulate was a guy by the name of Bruce Martin. And my Aunt Tina and her boyfriend would turn down the sound and I would do it. And she said, "Man, you're fantastic." It's like when you feel like you have that child reinforcement's pretty good. And then later on down the line, when I was working in Detroit, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I had another good friend of mine, ironically, during March Madness, where I was actually broadcasting some of the games, and they said they turned it down. I said, "We love you a lot better too," and they would listen to me. It's pretty encouraging. Now I got to talk about one thing. You talk about Jimnantz, which was really interesting. Remember the time I was talking to Jim? Said, "Let me ask you, Jim. Okay, you ever dawned on you to do baseball?" And he said, "Nah, you know what? No, I like golf, but baseball's not my animal." And I can see why, because he probably doesn't have as big a history with baseball. Baseball's not an easy sport because you really have to do twice as much research over the course of an extended time. Forget about all the things they're talking about to speed up the game. That's not relevant to what we're talking about. But baseball, you got to be thoroughly researched. You're probably looking at 6 to 10 hours at the ballpark, just between pregame, postgame, and everything you do, depending on the length of the game. So, but that was one of my favorite stories with Jim Nantz. And again, you know what? As a child, okay, in your mind where you can go, no, is it never meant to happen that way? You never know, but you know what? It's all about dreaming and then really pushing and be persistent. I still have aspirations, even at 60 now, to do a fair amount of play-by-play, and I'm not going to let off the gas until the man upstairs said you can't do it. But I can appreciate where you're coming from. All right, final question. You talked about doing some teaching at University of Alabama, and you're getting your PhD degree. So go ahead and go into more detail about that.
Quick tie back to Jim Nantz. He actually clarified that in an interview later, that he mentioned he didn't have a desire to call baseball because just the reason you said. He mentioned he feels that he could not do justice to the sport of baseball and calling it in the booth
Right.
as it definitely deserves. Because, it's guys like, we got to meet Dave Jagler, the voice of the Washington Nationals, and talk about baseball and that kind of stuff. And I appreciate baseball. I certainly am willing to call it. I just won't be as in depth of knowledge, and that's why I let my analysts shine in that regard. But it's for Jim's case, he definitely knows his strengths, and in that case, he expresses what he feels is a weakness. But I think he could hold his own if he called.
Well, the thing is, when you talk about that, though, and I'll take any opportunity that comes my way, regardless of the sport. But the two I'm the most comfortable with mainly is baseball and football. And basketball's all right. Okay, I don't like the way the game is turned into a jump shooting thing versus a dunk being replaced. But that's beside the point. In hockey, what takes an unbelievable person to do that. That's why you had the Kennyalberts out there.
Oh yeah,
and
he's great.
You have the Gary Thorns, the John Waltons, and the list goes on and on. But hockey's a bit faster paced, so you have to focus. I like anything that allows my mind to work in ways, and I think football and baseball would do that. But again, if an opportunity to say, hey, you want to do it, I wouldn't turn it down. Are you kidding? I always look at the microphone to me as like a lollipop. You can never have you can never have too much of it. In fact, what are those suckers called, the blow pop, where you have the gum inside along with it? All of those are unbelievable. So
yeah, those are good. And I've called hockey a couple times for penalty box radio here in Nashville at the high school level. And even then it's a whole different animal, but you have to be very quick. And I just had work for the NSMA chapter. We just had a Zoom conversation with Kenny Albert on Monday, who's a great guy, great broadcaster. And he's talked about, he loved hockey ever since high school. He knew he wanted to continue to do hockey. And it's translated over to he's called so many different sporting events. And that's why he's the Swiss Army knife of broadcasters, as he's been referred to in the media's sake. But to answer your initial question about Alabama, so right now I'm teaching Intro to Sports Communication, the program that's within. So it's College of Communication and Information Sciences, the Journalism and Creative Media Department, and within that there's the Alabama program in Sport Communication. And basically, with the Alabama program in sport communication, it does its best to prepare students to be able to go into the workforce, to be marketable. And all the classes they have, they require their seniors to produce a sports portfolio, which basically showcase all their stuff. So that way it makes them marketable on the workforce. So what I do with Intro to Sport Communication, I teach about, right now it's about 90 students. I think the section I'm teaching this fall is about 45. So I'll have a chance to have a more intimate relationship, because when you have 100 students in the room, you can't really, you can, there's some of them that stand out and you're able to have conversations with, but with 100 people in the same class, there's some voices that get lost or some people who don't, communicate as much. But what I do is I'm just teaching them essentially the basics between, live tweeting, sports writing, reporting, play-by-play, just sport communication as a whole, marketing, public relations, like just to teach them that you're not just limited to the broadcast booth. Right. You have plenty of other jobs in sports media, as you have very much proven through the South Florida Tribune of that, you do live shows, you do podcasts, news articles, videos, interviews. You even do your own, marketing, public relations, promotions, and all of that. So Yeah, and so I might need to get you to speak for the NSMA chapter at some point. Not thinking about it, because you'd be a viable asset to show them that, hey, you can do this yourself. But the cool thing about Alabama is that next spring 2024, we are going to officially launch a sports announcing course, and they're going to have me lead the charge on that. And the basic idea of it, and I haven't looked at the syllabus and all the specifics within it, but the basic idea of the course is, okay, you're play-by-play today, your color analyst today, your sideline reporter, here's some footage with ambient background noise, crowd noise, action, call the game, and give them critiques afterwards. And once we get them good enough to where they can put something on their portfolio, put something to be able to present to future employers, because the challenge comes in with getting opportunities, especially at the college level. You would think at the University of Alabama, the opportunities for on-air work would be, somewhat plentiful. They're there, but the athletics department, they like to hire people with more experience. Right. They'll definitely allow students within CNIS to work behind the scenes on the camera and that kind of stuff. But on air, they put their trust in those who have done it for several years, or people like myself who have 500 plus broadcasts and can show what they're capable of. But it's we're trying to give them those opportunities in that regard, to be able to get experience and get the reps, as people always talk about. And I think the sports announcing class is really going to do a good option of that once it launches. And I'm just fortunate enough that to be a part of that, and to be a part of starting something, more so than obviously starting the NSMA chapter as part of it, but be able to start a course that actually produces sports broadcasters, that actually produces people who have a better edge than their other colleagues at other universities and other colleges of people starting out. So it's really exciting stuff. I've enjoyed being able to get the NSMA chapter up and running, and the sports announcing course is definitely going to be interesting to see.
It's amazing how you talk about that, because a lot of people that know me know I love public speaking. I got a BA degree in communication over at the University of South Florida back in 1986. If I'm not doing play-by-play, I would love to be able to do public speaking. So anytime you need me to speak to those people up in Alabama, give me enough notice. I'll make sure I get there. I should also point out one of my favorite people I actually met was Docemerick over at that convention. I don't know were you there with me then or not? I don't know if you were.
Not in 2019. I've emailed Doc several times, which actually, thank you for inadvertently reminding me. I need to email him again and reach out. I know he's retired and such, but I need to reach out to him again, because I remember asking him. I told him about getting a full ride to the University of Alabama and PhD school and everything, and his advice to me was talking about the the conference and anchoring around there, and he told me, I need to make sure I get the quote right here, but he told me, best of luck to you in your studies. While it may seem difficult at times or challenging, and you may be at your low points, this is an industry well worth sacrificing for. And he especially, that's the path I'm taking, is the Docemerick path. He got a PhD, he got a job at a university teaching, but he was calling hockey games for the college during his studies. And then within, I think, 5-10 years, he got picked up by the New Jersey Devils. And then obviously history, what have you, he became, the voice of the Stanley Cup final up until the second to last year that NBC had the rights to the NHL package. So, I'm taking the same path as him, and I need to reach out to him. Thanks for reminding me, Scott. I need to, after we get done with this, I'm shooting him an email telling him about my PhD study, is asking for advice in that regard. That's incredible.
Well, when you send that email, tell him that I met him as well, and that I probably will reach out to him, because let me tell you, Docemerick is a gold standard for not only broadcasters, but just people. Yep. I probably have to do a better job going into there and be able to email it here and there, but I'm so busy with other stuff. But you can mention that. I should point out too that Docemerick's just unbelievable. And I told him of some things I was looking for, and he admitted to me, and we both knew it talking, that my age probably at this point would make it hard. But he said, don't give up on it. I know you got the passion for it. It's just you have to try different things to entice people that your experience will you'll be able to utilize your experience and give you that little bit of an advantage. So, it's amazing too. You're in Alabama. You have Nick Saban and Eli Gold as the gold standard, pun intended this time, of Alabama Crimson Tide. And I know Kenny Stabler used to call football games, and I ran across these people a couple of times at the Citrus Bowl in Orlando. So, have you ever had a chance to meet Nick Saban or Eli Gold?
Not yet. So I emailed Mr. Gold back in, I think, September, October, or before the semester started. He obviously this past fall, that from the recording of this episode in 2023, the 2022 football season, he was out the entire season because he was dealing with a medical issue. And they finally published it in January that he was dealing with a treatable form of cancer. And they just announced, as of recording this, I think a week or two ago, they just announced that Eli Gold is set to come back in the fall for the football season. So I emailed him. He responded saying, "Hey, I'm not going to be able to meet with you just yet. I've got a medical issue." But him and I are going to get lunch at some point. Obviously, in this past spring, we met Andy Burcham, who's the voice of the Auburn Tigers. So we got that. So we got to meet his kind of counterpart in the SEC in some regards, or colleague, lack of a better term. But Eli Gold, I'm definitely going to get the chance to meet with him at some point, just whenever he's available, because I know he's a busy guy. And Nick Saban, I don't know when the time will come for that, because especially, Nick Saban is really busy. I mean, he's pretty much the number one source of revenue for the University of Alabama. He's pretty much notable in that regard. I would love to meet him and have a conversation with him. But at this point, I have not met them yet. But the goal during my studies here is to meet both of them.
Well, that's good. And again, that's what it's all about. You're at a very prestigious university. I was there one time when I went to the Bear Bryant Museum across from the football stadium. So it was kind of neat there. But I also had a chance to cover a Florida Gators Alabama basketball game, and it was really, really neat. So, folks, in case you're just joining us, happy Saturday afternoon, by the way, that No Limits can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. You're walking, you're in the subway, you're in the car. Tune us on. And also, if you're watching us, please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube South Florida Tribune. We're striving for 1,000 subscribers, certainly more than that. We'll be happy to get to that number. But you want to be a guest? Everybody's entitled to it. All you need to do is send us topic ideas at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. I'll put you on a show which is more suitable to what you come along with. And if you want to advertise, call 954-304-4941. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and our YouTube channel. Also, our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. And if you're watching us, you can see that I'm also on Twitter at Tribune South. I'm being joined today by aspiring sportscaster Spencer Tomsett, a guy that I really, really gravitated to. And obviously, if you're watching the whole interview, you'll understand why. I think Spencer is one of those kinds of guys that the sky's the limit. It really is with you, Spencer. You're well educated, but the one thing about you is you have a great perspective of what you want to do. And I hope if you get anything out of this show, folks, is an older guy like me still has dreams, and a guy like Spencer does, chase your dream as much as you probably can in your passion, because that's what will make you happy inside and outside. And Spencer, like I told you, I've always wanted to bring on this show, and I'm glad that we were able to get the schedules to work out and that we can share our story, not about only introduction, but friendship and somebody that's a colleague, where we all pile it into one situation. And that's what makes this situation as great as it is. So I hope everybody can be motivated and inspired by this show. And we'll be doing a lot more No Limits episodes in the near future as I look for certain individuals that I can talk to and their different comfort zones, or whatever you want to call it, topics or whatever. So Spencer, with that said, we're getting ready to wrap her up here. So any closing thoughts? And I want you to let everybody know how they can get a hold of you.
So I'll just say at Spencer Tomsett on any of my I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. Pretty much you can get a hold of me on any of those platforms at Spencer Tomsett, as you see on their screen there. in closing, you mentioned the chasing your dreams. One of the more meaningful quotes that I've gotten from Jimnantz. We were on Zoom call for the Sportscasters Talent Agency of America this was in early 2020 at the peak of the shutdowns. No sports are going on, and John Chalesnik, who runs it, is a great guy, and he put together this whole panel of a lot of notable broadcasters, including ianeagle and Tracy Wolfson, Kevin Harlan, and Bob Costas called in, and Jimnantz was the first one to lead off. And Jim mentioned right at the end when they were in closing odds and everything, his quote that rings true for me and should definitely ring true for anybody who is wanting to get into this business. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't make it. If you continue to do the work and pursue your dream and just continue to be kind, you will make it in this industry. And it's a testament to, guys like, Jim. He's a good mixture of, he knows the status he has and he doesn't abuse that privilege. Fortunately, I personally have not met anybody in their position in the sports media realm that is aware of their position and uses it to feel like they're better than anyone else. Not to say there aren't people like that in the sports media industry, but I have yet to meet somebody who is like that. When you find your dream, when you know what it is you want to do, there's no use wasting your time pushing for anything else. And especially in the the sports media realm, it's you're gonna have a lot of sacrifices. You got to put your stripes in. You got to do the hard work. But it's just as Doc told me, Dr. Mike Emmerich told me, it is an industry well worth sacrificing for. Anytime you're struggling, anytime you're trying to push through, just remember that it's preparing you for the true bliss you'll experience when you achieve your dream. And you'll be able to look back on it and say, you know what, this experience was terrible, but it got me to where I am.
Well, I can tell you this right now. Number one, as I mentioned earlier in the show here, Spence, okay, when you are a part of this organization, everybody in National Sports Media Association, these people are down to earth people, and they're some of the greatest people that you can talk to. I have never in my time seen any egos at all. Lesleyvissar, I had a chance to catch up with her, and Leslie and I reminisced a little bit about the time that we were over at the Pontiac Silverome. I wrote a story on her, and the list goes on and on, so I don't want to keep name dropping, but Leslie was great. But the one thing I can say about journalism 101, okay, learn the 5 W's and 1 H: who, what, when, where, why, and how. Because I'm going to tell you, in life, the 5 W's and 1 H will lead you anywhere you want to go, regardless of what industry, whether you're in, whether it's media, whether it's sales, or whatever the case is. As long as you commit to the 5 W's and 1 H, you'll never go wrong. So meanwhile, again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in on No Limits. And we look forward to doing more No Limits. There's another show out there called The Real and the Rare, which will emphasize on non-sports and maybe occasionally sports topics to go along with our regular lineup. So if you want to go through our regular lineup of shows, go to www.southfloridatribune.com. One other kudos I want to provide is Candy Eveling, who does a remarkable job putting these broadcasts up, as well as her work on the South Florida Tribune. Without Candy, none of this would be possible. So, Spencer, I want to thank you very much for joining us on this edition of No Limits. And I look forward to seeing you down the road when I return there medically and I'm able to get up there again. But please send my regards to all of our good friends up there this summer and let them know I haven't forgotten them, especially Bobryan, okay? You tell Bob when you see him, I love the guy. I'll probably try to get a hold of him at some point or another. And you know what? To me, those are just my pals and my esteemed colleagues. So these people are gold, in my opinion. No more puns intended. I kind of used those up already. But meanwhile, thank you very much for joining us, Spence.
Yeah, appreciate the invitation, Scott. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, whether it's on the air or off the air, even at Winston-Salem or what have you. I know that it takes a lot of it takes a lot of courage to be able to ask a bunch of people to subscribe to your YouTube channel, even if it's just at a networking event or what have you. And you certainly are on your way to where you want to go. I'm sure if Lionel Messi gets signed with Inter Miami FC, you'll be hearing from me sooner than later to get into the booth with you to help you on South Florida Tribune stuff and try to get a photo op with the greatest soccer player of all time because of his incredible performance in the World Cup. And if he moves over to the United States, then that once in a lifetime experience would be incredible. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Scott. I look forward to whenever we have our next conversation. And certainly when you're in Winston-Salem next, the drinks are on me.
Well, that's fine. But I'll tell you one thing I'm really glad about this conversation, other than the fact that anytime I get on with you, it's always a blast. I'm glad that you were able to incite the audience about the approach I took towards introducing people with the photo, because I think that's something that people need a way to break the ice a little bit. And I'm glad that you were able to gravitate to what we were doing. And now not only did you gravitate, I'll be proud when you tell me that you duplicated it. So.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. It'll that'll be fun to show my colleagues how it's done in Winston-Salem this summer. Be able to show them with introducing Lee Corso when he's there, Ken Rosenthal, ianeagle, I think Jeff Platch as well with his co-sports writer of the year award, and all the other state winners. It'll be really special to be able to show that to students who are either around my age or younger, between that 18 to 24 demographic. So it'll just be fun. It's really going to be exciting, and I'm looking forward to the summer. Even though we won't see you there this year, I'm just thankful for the conversation. And I'm sure we'll have plenty more as the years go by.
You know that, man. You know that, Spencer. I treat you like my own son. And you know what? When you have somebody that you really bond with, because you and I clicked instantly, it was just so fun having you around the whole time, and that we were able to really have a good time together. Those memories are priceless. So meanwhile, once again, folks, this includes this edition of No Limits. On behalf of Spencer Tomsett, my name is Scott Morganroth. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next broadcast here on the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel / South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network. Take care, everybody. Have yourself a wonderful weekend, and God bless and be safe. Bye now.